Well, hello there. You're listening to episode number 28 of the Parenting Guide, Organizing Habits Made Easy podcast. I'm so glad you're here with me today, and I hope you're having a wonderful week and that everything's under control and smooth sailing with your holiday plans. Whether you're staying in and enjoying a quiet season or out and about visiting friends and family, whichever it is, I hope this holiday season is filled with peace, joy, and spent with those that you hold dear to your heart. Now, speaking of the holidays, this is my last episode for 2022 because I'll be taking a bit of a pause for the next couple of weeks so as to be fully in the moment with my family and enjoy the holiday season. Also, I've been doing some self-analysis and evaluation of my business as a whole these last few weeks. So as of January 2023, I'll have a new schedule of when my podcasts will be released, and that would be every 2 weeks. As much as I want to release an episode on a weekly basis, it's not ideal for me right now at this time in my life. I know many of you can relate to trying to balance out work, family life, and your own personal growth and development. And it's really tough. There's only so many hours in a day and so much of our bandwidth that we can stretch. So when this happens, something's gotta give. And I chose this. But don't worry, it's not forever. Now that we got that out of the way, today's podcast episode is a good one because it's about the elephant in the room. And by elephant, I mean all the clutter in our home. More specifically, why we shy away from addressing it or push decluttering to the back burner all the time. So I'm very excited to talk to you about why do we struggle to declutter? On top of listing the reasons why, I'll give you tips and strategies to help you with this, and hopefully by understanding or even acknowledging the reasons, it'll help us get past the blockage and be able to move forward. We've got a lot to cover today, so let's not delay any longer. Are you ready? Let's go. Parenthood is challenging enough as it is, and getting organized sounds easier said than done. Now, combine these two together, and it's truly a balancing act that many of us struggle with day in, day out. If you're here, it's because you want to know how to get your life and home more organized and structured where the kids are involved too, so that parent life is a little easier and you can focus on what truly matters. Hey there, I'm 𝙤𝙤𝙢𝙚𝙤𝙤, owner and founder of One Tidy Place. I created this podcast because I know parents have their hands full. I know this because I have 3 kids of my own. Each week, we'll talk about all things organizing, teaching kids life skills, and contributing to the home, being on the same page with your partner, and raising your kids together while you tidy up, go out for a walk, or just need some real talk. I'm here for you. Thank you for tuning in. Are you ready? Let's do this. So, why do we struggle with decluttering? Why is it so hard to get motivated to even start? Aside from having too many things or not having enough time to declutter, there lies multiple, deeper reasons why we struggle to declutter our home. And for the sake of keeping this episode bite-sized and actionable, I'm also not a specialist in human behavior or don't have a psychology degree, so I'm going to uncover the 4 most common ones here. So let's go. Reason number 1, it's not in us. And what I mean by this is that it's not in our habit to put away things right after we're done using them. Oftentimes, this is something we never really learned how to do. And I, for one, can admit to this. Growing up in the 80s, let's just say it's not like how it is today or in the last decade. But growing up in the 80s, we were left home alone a lot because my parents had to work. My mom was a nurse and sometimes she had to do double shift. We had 1 car and their job was downtown and we lived in an apartment building in the suburbs. But we pretty much had to take care of ourselves. Now, it sounds horrible right now, what I'm saying, and people probably be ready to call child services, but no, it wasn't like that, especially in the 80s. We had to figure things out. You see, my parents, they're great parents, and they also had to do what they needed to do with the knowledge that they had and the capacity and support they were given, which wasn't much because the other family or relative that we had was my aunt. And she was a full-blown adult working her job, and she had her own life too. So my parents also had to figure it out. Just to paint a picture for you, they were here in their 20s, new to this country. They didn't speak French, and my mom had to go to school also so that she can learn the language and be able to work. And oftentimes she'd take the second shifts just to help make ends meet. All this to say is that my brother and my sister and I were home and we managed. Our parents set it up so we had what we needed for school and our lunches and how to make breakfast on our own. And we were very responsible about making sure that everything was turned off before we left to go to school. As crazy as it sounds, we pretty much grew up figuring things out for ourselves. I gotta hand it to my brother though, because he was only in grade 6. And he really helped us and helped me get ready for school and walk those 11 blocks to get us there on time. So with this, because we were kids too, picking up after ourselves didn't come naturally. I know this now, raising my own kids and observing them. Picking up after ourselves is a learned behavior. Either you were taught it at a young age and now it's in you as an adult, or you weren't taught it at all and now you have to learn the skill. So what can we do to sharpen that habit of picking up after ourselves? When I worked at McDonald's back in the early to mid 90s, the call that we all used was clean as you go. And this was a reminder we'd hear, especially during the lunch and supper rush. And each cashier was in charge of a station or a section to keep clean during the rush. Working at McDonald's back in those days, it was a great base for learning life skills and habits. They said that if you were trained at McDonald's, it was easy to find another job afterwards after you left that stage because you had great training. I can't say what it is like today, but it's very different from when it was back in those days. Anyhow, back to learning life skills and habits, another strategy to help us get that habit down with picking up after ourselves is having a catch-all for common clutter-forming items, such as paper. So if you need to, put a basket or a tray where all papers can be put in. So look at your space and see where paper is usually piled up. Oftentimes, this is the kitchen table or the island. So put a tray there and let everyone know this is where to put all the papers, whether it's school documents, bills, and pamphlets from the mailbox, they all go in there. And then when you have time, or better yet, make time to go through that basket and sort everything out, you'll know where everything is because they're all in one place. All right, next one. I know this is a tough one. Putting away laundry right after folding it. I struggle with this myself, especially when it comes to regular clothes. But what I do intentionally practice, even though it's just so tempting to toss it all in the basket and leave it there until I feel like folding, and that's to fold the towels right away. And this makes it so much easier to put everything back in the linen closet. So if you have to start somewhere, start with the towels. Baby steps. You got this. Next, we have empty the dish rack and dishwasher in the morning. This is what we do. We load it up all day and run it at night. In the morning, the kids are assigned to empty it, but it's one kid emptying the dishwasher for that week. What my friend and fellow organizer does is that she runs the dishwasher multiple times a day. She's got a couple more kids than me, and it's a busy household. So it makes sense that the dishwasher will be filled a lot more. So how they do it is that they assign specific people to empty the dishwasher after every meal. Another trick is to keep busy. And the popular one with this is don't leave a room empty-handed. There's always something to put away on your way to your next location. Now, speaking of having our hands full, when we come home and we pass by the mailbox, it's important that when we pick up the mail and bring it inside, to sort the mail right away before they hit the counter. So place each paper item in their proper end point. So that could be recycling, the trash, or in the to address basket or folder. The final example I have to help us sharpen that habit of picking up after ourselves is placing command hooks where clothes normally end up on the floor. So for us, it's against our dresser or along the wall to reduce the amount of clothes that are piled up either on the dresser itself, on the floor, or on the chair in your bedroom. This is especially helpful in the kids' rooms because you know where the clothes are. It's either on them or all over the floor. So let's make it obvious for them and put those hooks up. I like to line them up on the wall behind the door. So when you walk in, there's usually nothing on the floor. Okay, moving on to reason number 2 as to why we struggle to declutter. And that is, there's no rush, so there's no reason. We don't feel any pressure to do it, except the only pressure we feel is the one we're putting on ourselves with our own self-talk. But we learn to mute that often, don't we? So what do I mean by no rush? Let me explain this with an opposite example of my mom's situation when she had to move real quick because her house sold so fast after it was put up for sale. And she only had about a month and a bit to declutter her whole house, downsize, and move from a 4-bedroom, 3-bath house and into a 1-bedroom condominium. We're talking about 35 plus years worth of stuff to declutter in a matter of over a month. So you can see the opposite of no rush and no reason here. There was rush and there was definitely a reason. So here's another opposite example when you change jobs or an unexpected family member is visiting or you're in a situation where friends or loved ones have to now live with us indefinitely. Basically, anything with a deadline or a timeline involves pressure. If money's not a motivator to declutter, losing time is. So why don't we use time as an ally and tool and not let it dictate our lives, okay? So set a timer for 10 minutes and focus on decluttering. I'm going to give you examples of things to try. At the end of the day, save the last 10 minutes before turning in for the night or relaxing with some Netflix. Clear the counters of common rooms and do this daily until it becomes part of the routine. In 10 minutes, you can also tidy up a room, clean out a junk drawer, or remember that basket of papers from the mail? Sort out 1 inch worth of papers from your paper pile. Separate these piles with paper clips or use folders. Whatever it is, set a timer with a buzzer and get to work. Small wins go a long way, my friend. All right, another reason why we struggle to declutter is reason number 3, and that's we got used to it or it's out of sight, out of mind. The first one is we got used to it. The clutter is not affecting our everyday activity and we built a coping mechanism around it. And that could be just shoving things to the corner or moving the piles of clutter from one space to another. Whatever it is, we figured it out and simply managing. Now the second one, out of sight, out of mind, here's an example. Remember how I told you earlier, we had to help my mom declutter quickly because her house sold so fast. And with the decluttering, of course, you'll run into some items that can be sold. And that's what we tried to do as much as we could. We tried to maybe make a few dollars as she was downsizing. Why not? Her things were still good. Now, the problem was my mother wasn't ready to sell certain items at the price we suggested. But with the deadline fast approaching, we didn't have time to do a lot of research. It was pretty much just making a couple of bucks here and there, whatever it was. Mind you, we did manage to sell her sofa and her love seat at a pretty decent price, but there's some items that we did put up for sale and she wasn't liking the prices that we were putting them at. Anyhow, I had a couple of people interested in a couple of frames that she was willing to part with, and she backed out at the last minute. So deadline came up and we had to clear out the house and pack everything up. So where are these frames now? Well, they're in her locker in the basement in the condo's garage in a 5x7 space. And that was 6 years ago. Yeah. So this is something that's common for many people, probably more than we can even imagine. There are things we just don't want to deal with just yet for X, Y, Z reasons. But before we get to that situation, here's something you can try after this episode if you do have items you're just not sure you want to keep or toss yet. So let's apply out of sight, out of mind. So here's an example of that. My client has a stack of jeans in her closet, and she normally wears leggings and workout clothes because that's what she does. That's what she teaches. And she even told me, I have this pile here, but I rarely wear them, and I can't see myself getting rid of them just yet. I'm 99% of the time in yoga pants. So I know to me, to you, right now listening to this, it's obvious for us what to do. Just get rid of them. Why? Because we're detached from the scenario. But I'm sure if we look at our own things, and there are things we're still on the fence about, we'd have the same struggles and thoughts as my client did. So I gave her this trick. And you can try this too if you have items that you're on the fence about. So I told her this. Put it in a bag, tie it up, and put it in another location somewhere in the house. Then set a reminder on your phone for 30 days from now, along with the location of the bag, to see if you'll even wear them. And if you're worried that someone might mistake it for garbage, just put a note on the bag, or better yet, include them in the experiment. Keep them in the loop. This way, you also have an accountability partner. So after 30 days, if she didn't wear them, she'd have to donate it. Obviously, if the bag was ripped open or untied, she would have worn it, so she'd have to reconsider incorporating her jeans into her regular rotation of clothes. So the out of sight, out of mind concept when it comes to struggling with decluttering is a reality that many of us experience every single day, but we just don't know it or are unaware of it. Oftentimes we struggle with remembering everything because our brains are filled with so many other things too. So set that reminder on your calendar, on your phone, or wherever, and put the notification on for 30 or 60 days from now and not more. In the big picture of your whole organizing journey, it's one less thing in your house and one thing off your mind for good. Decluttering our home helps us to see clearer because we just created more space in our brains and we also feel lighter too. It's funny, I tell my clients every time we have bags and bags of stuff we just decluttered, friend, you're literally losing weight right now. All right, let's keep moving on to the last reason why we struggle to declutter, and this is probably the most common one of all, overwhelm. Now let's look at the typical questions that cause overwhelm. What should I declutter first? There are many strategies you can search up online, but only you know which one's the best for you. For a quick win, the most common strategy is to declutter obvious items that you no longer need or have use for. Things that the kids have aged out of, don't play with, or have now grown out of. Another strategy is to declutter things that you have way too much of and attack that one category. One that comes to mind is paper. We all have it in our house, and oftentimes it's everywhere. So either you collect all the paper, then sort it out in specific piles, or collect a specific category of paper, such as receipts or kids' artwork or magazines, and go and declutter from that point. Breaking things down into simpler steps helps cut the overwhelm by a lot. Another question that causes overwhelm is, how do I declutter my house? When you do a Google search for this question, you'll get all sorts of answers and strategies. That alone can get overwhelming. But if you're here now, my suggestion is to first have a plan. What are you going to declutter? Which leads me to the next most common question, where do I start decluttering? So what space will you tackle first? Often, it's the one that annoys you the most, the one that is a real eyesore to see every single day. Or it's the space or clutter that's stopping you from moving smoothly and going about your day. It could also be the space that has the most moving parts that just needs to get contained. An example of this are the kids' toys. Speaking of which, I'll be starting a workshop on toy decluttering and organizing in 2023. So if you want to get in on the waiting list to find out when it all starts and be part of this group coaching workshop, head to dianejimenez.com/toy organizing course. But if you want to start off with a smaller space or one that doesn't evoke too much emotion that you feel like you're decluttering forever, I gave you some strategies before with allotting 10 minutes a day to declutter. Next, once you've set your goal of what to declutter, you might want to let others in on your decluttering project. Why? For one thing, and I'm a big proponent of this, is you're keeping them in the loop. The good thing is, you might get some recruits to help you out with the project. In doing this, and I love this part, is the ripple effects when you get kids involved, which is teaching them the importance of decluttering at a young age. The bad part is you might get some resistance from them. In other words, they don't want you to touch their things, and this is especially true for older kids. In order to avoid this or make the situation less uneasy, I suggest using an approach of listing the benefits of having a clutter-free home. An example of these benefits are the less time spent cleaning or looking for things, the less frustration there will be. And when there's less frustration and annoyance, well, everyone's just happier. Deep down, everyone's mental health can be less overloaded. And decluttering our home promotes instant mental space. Therefore, clarity. So back to overwhelm being one of the reasons why we struggle to declutter. Maybe it's simply not knowing how to, or even having the time to go through the whole decluttering process. This is where consulting with a professional organizer is needed. We can help, guide, and direct you and keep you on track with your decluttering and/or organizing projects. Oftentimes, we need a sounding board to help us with our decisions and someone to just lead the way for us in getting our homes more structured and, well, organized. If you've always wanted to hire a professional organizer but didn't know anything about it, take a listen to my episode number 7, Things You Need to Know Before Hiring a Professional Organizer. I'll link it in the show notes too. So in this episode, I also give you a link to a PDF cheat sheet to help you get some clarity during your consultations. So head to dianejimenez.com/podcast7, all in one word. You can do this after this episode, of course. A final example where overwhelm is the reason we struggle to declutter is having to deal with the stuff that's worth something. Now, you can hire an appraiser or a specialist for the stuff that potentially has some value, but when it comes to the stuff you can get some extra cash for, selling them online is an option. While I'm not going to get into that in this episode, you can grab the one I already made. It's podcast episode number 12, How to Increase Your Chances of Selling Your Items Online. I'll add the link as well. Now, I know I covered the very surface of overwhelm, but I'm going to sidebar here for just a second. It's an important one, so you might want to take this down. There are people who are affected with chronic disorganization, whether they know it or are completely unaware. This episode isn't about chronic disorganization. The strategies and tips I provide may help. However, if you do want to find out more about chronic disorganization or to see if you're someone who is affected by it, the ICD, or Institute for Challenging Disorganization, is a wonderful place to start and get all the information you need, from taking their assessment scales to finding a qualified organizer to work with. So if you're at all curious, head to challengingdisorganization.org. Okay, so I just gave you a chock full of reasons why we struggle to declutter, along with some tips, resources, and strategies to help you with your decluttering project. I hope you got one or two takeaways from today's show. And as always, if you know another parent, friends, or family members struggling with decluttering, text them the link of this episode and let them know, hey, this is a great episode. You might want to check it out. However, if it feels awkward to do this, I get it. You can always share this episode on social media. You never know who's struggling behind closed doors right now, and they need to hear this episode today. So with this, I want to take this time to thank you for listening and being so amazing and patient with my episodes being released. As I mentioned at the beginning, come 2023, I'm aiming to release them on a bi-weekly basis. That's every 2 weeks. So I hope you're liking what I've given you so far in my first year of podcasting. If you have any topics you want to discuss, please shoot me a DM on Instagram or on Facebook. You can find me at One Tidy Place because these episodes can only get better after this. So I bid you a very happy holiday season, my friend. May you and yours stay safe, surrounded by love and laughter, and above all, stay healthy. See you in the new year. Bye-bye.